one of the last places that I've taught classes, and I don't travel around too much, is actually in Bradford here. And it's because I made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because a lot of shuyukh that come to you, or they're traveling, a lot of them leave their families and they leave their children behind. And maybe you don't see that directly, maybe you're always with your family, but you don't see that there are children back home that have to wait for weeks and weeks until their dad comes home. And to see sometimes, when the child says, "Baba, don't leave again," and the sadness on their face when you're like, "You know what, I'm going on another trip," and this and that. And it was very painful to me to see this. And then I asked myself, is this what Islam commands? That we abandon our children for the sake of the da'wah? And I don't believe so. I believe that we need to be more intelligent about how we do our da'wah, so that one person isn't just traveling around the world and every conference, every lecture is the same person and whatnot. I believe that da'wah needs to be done in a more intelligent way, using more technologies. And so maybe even a point right now that I would say for media. And these media companies really do deserve our support. If somebody said, Muhammad, can you give a lecture at our local masjid or something like that, I would say I would rather give that time to do some recording with one of these Islamic satellite stations. That recording can go to hundreds of thousands of people and can be played many times into the future. It becomes like a legacy. And so we have to start thinking intelligently. So when I tell my kids, hey, you know what, I'm going for 2-3 weeks, I'm not necessarily just going on a tour, but rather it would be going to a studio to do that effort and do intelligent. I'm saying this is just from my perspective, doing things online and whatnot, but I wish the same for you as well. That when we do our effort, that it's not always start, go, we have to start from the beginning. Think of ways that the da'wah can actually get stronger and go further. It doesn't have to go downwards. You'll actually find that when you put in some effort into thinking how we can do this, you'll see that more people benefit from the da'wah. If we just stop thinking about the old ways of just doing lecture after lecture after lecture and saying, well, what new ways can we pass on this message? There was actually one really sad statistic. When you look at religions that are online, they say that the number one religion that has representation online is Christianity. I don't know what number 2 is, but number 3 is what? Is the religion of yoga. And then Islam comes down in the bottom somewhere. Meaning that there's more people online that care about yoga than people care about supporting the da'wah and actually pushing the da'wah forward. How sad is that? When the radio came along, in many Muslim countries, whoever had a radio, they would drag them in the street and they would smash the radio in front of their face. Now all of a sudden we have radio stations, 500 years later. When the TV came along, of course, that's always our first step is just blast the TV. Whoever has a TV, there's a haram, haram. Until now that it's been about 10 years that people have left television, now we're coming up with our TV stations. Now the internet is old. I would even say getting on the internet now is like, okay, now you got on, good for you, mashallah, right? But even for the internet, you want to look at what's the next technology coming around the corner. And rather than us debating about it for the longest time, and until finally 50 years after nobody uses it anymore, we decide, hey, this would be a great idea to do da'wah with this. Why don't we look ahead and prepare for those things? I'll end with this. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he wanted to do hijrah. He was whenever commandment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would come, he would be one of the first people, if not the first person, to implement. The commandment for permission to go for hijrah came, and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu wanted to leave the next day. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, don't go, perhaps Allah will give you someone to travel with, a companion. Now here's something really interesting, and I want you to pay attention to this one. Ultimately, and I know you know the story, when the Prophet ﷺ came on that day and said, Allah has given me permission to do hijrah, and Abu Bakr said, together, O Messenger of Allah, And the Prophet ﷺ said together, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu started crying out of happiness and they began the hijrah together. You will see that Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was fully prepared for a companion to go with him. He had 2 camels, food for 2 people. Everything was double. Because it was a dua that he made long time ago. Oh Allah, allow that companion to be with, who would go with me, let him be the Prophet ﷺ. He made the dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and he prepared for it. He didn't just make a dua with no action. He made dua and he prepared and he acted as if Allah has already answered his dua. To the point where when the chance comes, the opportunity came, he's completely ready for it. To take the gift of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this opportunity to do hijrah with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I'm saying the lesson that I would like all of us to learn is when you make dua, have that yaqeen when you're making dua and act as if the dua is already answered. And you'll see that when the opportunity does come up, you're fully prepared to accept that opportunity and move forward. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum.
A world of knowledge awaits you. Enroll now at AlMaghrib.org.